This afternoon's hearing of evidence. We have with us 4 submitted groups. This is our Kerikeri Community Charitable Trust. Welcome. Our Carbon Neutral New Zealand Trust. Welcome. Vision Kerikeri. Welcome. And Kaipiro Conservation Trust. Welcome. If I missed anybody out here? Right, we're all here. So I understand you're going to be sort of presenting a joint submission. So as we normally do with you, well, firstly, welcome back to this hearing. I'll let you organise amongst yourselves how you want to present your evidence. We might ask you questions at the end of individual presentations, or we might just wait until the end and just see how we go. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
And I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, and thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you again. You know us already. So our groups have numerous members with professional expertise covering many fields, and who are deeply invested in the future of this community, not for personal gain, but for the well-being of our land, rivers, people, flora, fauna, and climate. We have decided to present this together, bit by bit, but we will follow the paper that you have received, the first 10-page paper. It is much too long to read everything, so we will leave a lot of stuff for yourselves to read eventually. We'll just cover the main points, and we will also cover the main points of where we are of different opinion, or where we think that the PDP is not yet as it should be, where we are not in agreement with the planners, while obviously many other points we are agreeing with the planners, but that doesn't need to be repeated. In brief, our PDP submission requested the basis for planned and well-managed growth in infrastructure, avoiding residential sprawl, appropriate intensification supported by master plans and urban design guidelines, affordable homes, functionality and amenity, including visual amenities, connectivity and integrated multimodal transport, environmental protection and climate resilience, and enhanced distinctive character of towns to support economic, social, and cultural well-being. Obviously, that does not concern only Kerikeri, but our focus is mainly on Kerikeri.
Sure. Vince Buxton. I'm a founding member and trustee of our Kerikeri Charitable Trust. I've been watching Kerikeri grow for 30 years. I'm an owner of a real estate company in Kerikeri, and also have been involved in a number of developments in Kerikeri. During that time, I've had an opportunity to work with various versions of the district plan, prior one leading up to the one that was adopted in 2009, and obviously the operating plan were under now proposed district plan. And I had an opportunity to see during that time what works, if you like, for the community, and some of the stuff that hasn't worked so well. My view is that the intent of the plans, when they're written in the beginning, has always been very good. It tends to last a long time. I think this plan was written some 25 years ago when it was first pen to paper, adopted in 2009. And as time goes on, some of the original meaning gets lost. Words may not be crafted in a way that the intent can be challenged quite easily as time goes on. And what I found is that developers, I include myself amongst those, have become more sophisticated, have teams of lawyers, and they're very good at finding loopholes and finding ways to get around things. Precedents get set, and then unintended consequences result. So, we've seen the result of factories being built on our main roads on the way into Kerikeri, where there was no intention of that being in the original plan. This was supposed to be a rural production area. We've seen 2- to 3-story residential buildings being built on streets that were designed for commercial use on the very fringes of our commercial township. Our intent today is to suggest that the plan needs a little bit more rigor, so that planners can have more substance behind the planning decision process. A greater degree of confidence that they're not going to be challenged, if you like, and can reflect community aspirations, and a well-functioning urban environment will result from those decisions. A particular concern, is that we are now, it's great that we've been established as a tier 3 town, but we are just at the turning point of being a tier 3 town, and there's a concern that we may be treated as a tier 1 or tier 2 town for some of the decision making. We probably won't reach the threshold for being a tier 2 status within this planning cycle. So tempering the enthusiasm to intensify as a tier 2 or tier 3 town is something we feel is quite important. We've got to have some safeguards in place that will ensure we have well-functioning environments. Mostly because we want to ensure that the built form and character changes in alignment with community readiness and full infrastructure capacity. And we want to make sure we avoid tensions with community aspirations and put an appropriate development in place. So really my introduction here is to say that we as a group all feel there needs to be a more prescriptive and design-led planning framework that supports the current PDP. And that I'll let the rest of my team speak to those specifics.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Inga Bremer, member of Vision Kerikeri and Carbon Neutral Trust, and I'm covering 3 subjects right now. One of them is the prescriptive and design-led planning framework that Vince referred to already. We have the evidence of Katarina Polakova, the architect, who noted that in accordance with our feelings and research and experience, that a more prescriptive and design-led planning framework is really essential to ensure sustainable living outcomes. She says the future development, particularly within the urban zones, must be guided by robust planning and design principles that transcend a purely permissive approach. The community's experience, and this is what Vince mentioned, with the factories on the way into Kerikeri and residential buildings coming up, which was for areas that were intended for commercial, are leading to incompatible land uses and amenity and indigenous biodiversity loss. A shift towards more prescriptive and design-led planning framework is essential to ensure sustainable and livable outcomes. That's Katarina's page 4 on her evidence. The next subject is the problematic permissive approach. The operative district plan's permissive approach has enabled inappropriate ad hoc development and created large amounts of residential sprawl. And residential sprawl is of course connected to very costly pipelines for sewage and water and everything. It has failed to take infrastructure and connectivity into account appropriately. It has eroded community values and other characteristics that our community values. The draft proposed district plan acknowledged that the past permissive approach to development has led to adverse impacts on urban character, amenity and infrastructure provision. So that insight is there. We just haven't come to formulating a new PDP yet. Our community groups, a coalition of community groups, the 4 groups here, have consistently advocated for moving away from a permissive and effects-based planning approach, and this point was stated in our submissions. We want the proposed district plan to be more prescriptive. The PDP's over-reliance on discretionary activity status is of great concern to us. As noted in our previous PDP hearing statements, we are very concerned about the continued reliance on discretionary activity status combined with objectives and policies that include vague or ambiguous statements that are open to wide interpretation. In many cases, the PDP also lacks clear, unambiguous criteria for assessing applications. It is therefore wide open to differing interpretations. Consultants who write consent applications do not always act in the expected manner. Some will continue to cherry-pick policy statements that suit their clients, as occurs within the operating district plan. Reliance on discretion, combined with insufficient assessment criteria, will fail to provide transparent, consistent assessments. We expect it will result in inconsistent decisions on similar consent applications. Moreover, the reliance on discretion is likely to lead to district plan policies and rules being stretched increasingly over time, creeping further away from the original district plan expectation. For example, when an undesirable element is consented in an area, it becomes part of the existing environment, which then provides justification or precedent for future developments to adopt a similar undesirable element. And another example, if consent is granted for an urban building taller than the maximum height, it would likely lead to consents for more buildings above the maximum height. Over time, this would justify even taller buildings and undermine the height limit. At what point would a height become unacceptable under the PDP? What heights would be too tall? Well, we simply don't know. Because discretion in most cases lack clear criteria and it doesn't identify cut-off points, when activity is deemed unacceptable, we definitely need firm rules. The improvements we seek in the PDP approach are, according to Ms. Pollack's evidence in our PDP submission, have identified a number of constructive ways, which we will comment on later, in which the PDP should be strengthened to address the shortcomings identified above. Incompatible land use refers to situations where different types of land uses, when located near each other, negatively impact one another, often due to safety concerns, environmental issues, or a decline in the quality of life for those working or living in the area. These conflicts can arise from a variety of factors, including noise, odor, lots of traffic, and visual obstructions. We are seeking more enhanced terms and public notification when those terms are not met. The next.
Kia ora, I'm Anita, trustee and one of the founders of our Kerikeri Community Charitable Trust. My section's in regards improvements that we seek in the PDP approach. The first area is enhanced public notification for significant developments. We want to see explicitly stated breaches as deemed more than minor, particularly around critical design standards, height, as has been spoken, facade, material, building, articulation, etc. We need definition of what more than a minor is. What more than a minor is to the community would be quite different to what is deemed in legislation, and we have seen that with a large development in Kerikeri that was, 3 stories, very dense, no green space, and it wasn't required to be publicly notified, and we only were able to change the design to a more appropriate for the community by having a voice, spending thousands of hours as volunteers, having 1,000 people come to a meeting. We shouldn't have to do that. We want to see a really proactive approach, a very clear, succinct approach in terms of density, in terms of design, so that things can progress in a suitable way that the community backs and supports. So that's ultimately what we want to see come through in the PDP. and some of the changes that we wish to see made. To get that clarity around design and position and placement, we strongly have been advocating for a master plan for the downtown. Obviously, mixed use is a new thing in Kerikeri, and we want to see that done really well. And so we've been advocating constantly for a master plan for the CBD, particularly for Waipapa and Kerikeri. But we also want design protocols or design guidelines for particularly the urban area. I wanted to show an example of a 3-story that was built in the beautiful village of Howick. And this is probably one of the examples of having no design protocols, and so essentially anything could be built. So yeah, I'll leave that here, but it's a prime example of an arterial road, very busy road, right next to the CBD. And so we just want some controls and some protocols in place as to what gets built and how it gets built.
Can I just ask a question there about about master planning? And I know you're not a planner.
No.
So if you just don't know the answer, then I'm more than happy if I don't.
Yep.
But have you got any ideas about if a master plan approach were to be adopted, how that would be implemented?
Yep.
And how we would implement that in the water structure?
Yep. Yep. I know there has been discussions about the terminology of what a master plan is and placemaking plan, and we're community, so we've always just known it as a master plan. And it's really the ultimate thing we want to get is the look, the feel, and the future development of Kerikeri and what that should look like. Whether it's the pipes under the ground or any of that, that's all council, but it's more the look and feel and aesthetics of the CBD, the 3 stories, the roads, the transport, the connectivity in terms of cycling, pedestrians. I think council believe that that's a placemaking plan, and that could well be what that is. It's not really, I don't care what it's, or we don't care what it's called, but particularly as we're going mixed use 3-story and potentially at a greater area than the PDP. We just feel to avoid conflict, friction, to have real clarity around for developers what that looks like or what the community wants. It dictates all.
So would you see a master plan having something like a design guideline?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We've got design guideline as part of the master plan.
Right, and that you'd have a rule framework that would require developments to have regard to it.
Exactly, exactly. And how that gets done in the PDP, we've always thought it needs to be linked to the PDP and legally binding. We don't know how all that works at the council then, so this is very much from a community perspective. So that we can guide, because we've very much been ad hoc, obviously. You probably can see that as you come through Kerikeri and Asvince and into the same. We've got things popping up in places ordinarily you can see a factory right next to a residential development and stuff like that. So just more clarity so that we're not having to fight things and being able to have developments happen in a controlled, desirable way.
One of the strongest things we heard when we spoke to the community back in 2019, we spoke to around 1,200 people in the community, was a strong sense of trying to preserve the village feel of Kerikeri's central area. We're trying to preserve the brand of Kerikeri, if you like, on the national scene, make it attractive to visitors and make it attractive to people who come to. And that can be lost very easily if the design aesthetics and all those things just disappear. So there's a stronger sense for that here than there is in some other places. Perhaps it's strong, down in the South Island outside of Queenstown and some of Arrowtown, for example. I'm not saying we're Arrowtown, but I say we have the same sense of wanting to preserve some of that character. Acknowledging that we're growing, but how can we do it in a sensible way? The only way we can see to do that is to have some design guidelines that can be referenced and attached to the decisions that are approved by council within the PDP.
And Arrowtown itself in the PDP has a very specific section that the rules are for Arrowtown in order to preserve the village feel.
Historic nature.
So it's not too dissimilar to what we're after here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a new approach, obviously, master design guidelines. Not the first community to say we want to retain our village look and feel. It becomes really, everybody seems to, they know intuitively what that is, but then when you ask them to write it down, they often struggle, and then or that's when you find that there is but that's a process.
Correct.
What does village look and feel mean? It means all sorts of things.
We spent an hour last week debating it.
The other thing is too is that obviously that's a framework that could be implemented if somebody needs a consent. But how would you then implement a master plan, design-led system for permitted activity? You just encourage them to have regard to it, and then if you didn't think that they did, it's still a permitted activity, right?
I understand what you're saying.
You make everything
But something is better than nothing.
You might run into a brick wall if you try to do that. So I mean, I'm just wondering how if that ended up becoming a way that the plan adopted, how you would implement it in terms of
When the rubber hits the road.
So the plan needs to be descriptive enough. You will see in the documents, we don't want hotels, for example, or warehouses on the ground floor, where you're walking along the road, there's a lot of dead building, possibly of concrete, possibly only of glass, but nothing behind. It should be lively on the ground. So we have given a lot of examples of such in our papers.
It's interesting because you're looking at a more prescriptive approach, which is almost an antithesis of what the planning and moved over the years.
Correct.
It used to be very prescriptive, and then it became text-based, and now people looking at that. But one of the difficulties, I mean, is how you incorporate that in the plan. I guess you'd have to look at the existing mixed-use zoning and incorporating the design guidelines into it.
All that zoning.
Rather than running them through in the context of what we would be able to do in terms of the council's approach to it as such. But then there's the other difficulty of not throwing obstacles in the way. And the other difficulty is just the administration of that, of those provisions. With the action pages for people, you have somebody in the council who designs things to actually administer that.
Well, the smartest way for developers, but planning projects like that, talk to the community and to the planners who would know the community wishes as well. So communication rather than just going ahead and planning something.
Yes.
Because design guidelines are something other towns have
Absolutely.
and have had for a long time. And that's what creates their look and their feel and their it's not too dissimilar to that.
And to point of descriptiveness question, I think that we've been experiencing a pretty lax cooperative district plan implementation, and we've had a lot of ad hoc development not working, certainly not all well functioning in the environment. Connectivity is very poor. Many, you'll see through our presentation a bit later, many members of the community are just very quite unhappy and think things could be better. So yes, I recognise it's sort of things that have a critical flow, but we have tried the non-prescriptive method. It's not, it doesn't work here. It absolutely doesn't work. It has failed us, and we have proof of that if you need more. So we really are calling very strongly for a new approach, at which I will go on to describe if that helps a bit. Open. I have questions.
We've got another question for you.
Just council officers have put in the section 42A report in regard to design guidelines that the implementation plan for the spatial plan includes refining principles and development of design guidance. So does that without us having the ability to put some definitive guidelines there today, does that give you hope that don't answer that. So there's an implementation plan for the Waipapa Kerikeri spatial plan that will address those.
Yeah.
Are you hopeful?
We do know that the placemaking / neighbourhood plan for Kerikeri is 4 to 10 years away. Per the spatial plan implementation timeline at the back of the report.
As adopted by the council. It is the implementation in the back of the spatial plan adopted by council. It's an incredibly slow timeline for this work. So we are working on a solution, which we will come to.
And it's critical in Kerikeri because, as you know, there's big developments happening right on the doorsteps of the CBD. So we can't wait. And we know council's obviously resource strained, time strained, when you've got a district-wide spatial plan that you're having, you're going to have to deal with as well. We understand all that, but time is of the essence in Kerikeri, and we have been advocating this for a long time. And we began finding funding to do I'll call it master plan, placemaking, whatever it is, and it was put on hold because the spatial plan needed to be completed before you could step through into a master plan. So we want to see a community-led placemaking master plan and those design guidelines so that development can happen far easier and with far less friction. Because once a building's built, it's there for 50 plus years.
Environment, I should say.
50 plus years.
Yeah.
So we love our town and we know it's growing. And at our first community meeting, everybody spoke the same language in terms of their vision for Kerikeri. So we just want to see that tightly dealt with so that that's what happens here.
And we think for that process, as you are aware already from our previous submissions, that a top-down approach as done by the planners was not very suitable. We have repeatedly asked for a bottom-up approach, which we didn't get, but I just hope that for future planning this will be in the correct way.
Locally led.
And I'm sorry, nearly finished. Connectivity was another thing, is making sure that it's not just so car dominant here. We have had lost opportunities where connectivity could have taken place in new developments to really shorten the length for bicycles and walking. It was a lost opportunity. There were no future-proofing of pathways that could happen as and when a connectivity could occur. So that's really unfortunate. Outdoor space as well, if we're going to go medium density or much more dense than we are now, having that within the design guidelines or within the PDP, I think is really important. And the last thing is around development and financial contributions. Kelly's smiling at me. We've been advocating those for a very long time, and that would obviously help a lot with infrastructure costs, etc. I know the new government is, changing things. I think development contributions, the new government's looking at a mandatory one sort of across all of New Zealand, but this has been advocated for 10 years, so we've lost a significant amount of money from the developments to help towards investing in some of the much needed infrastructure. So I'm going to stop there. Sorry.
Did you want to cover?
I can give you an update on DCs.
Yes.
So yes, there was the announcement from the government, but we're being encouraged to finish off our work with DCs because their levy won't come in until 27 or 30, 2030. Yeah. So watch this space. We're nearly finished.
Awesome, because that big property has had the lot sold.
I know. And
So that's not going to be far away, and that could be 300-400 houses. So that development contribution needs to get in before
because that's been consented.
Yeah, perhaps, Mr. Chair, probably just to clarify some of our funding mechanisms, we do use developer agreements to help fund infrastructure, not over the top of all the details of all of them. But we haven't lost the opportunities to get some funding.
My understanding it's done on a resource consent
Basis.
subdivision.
There's certainly no formal contributions policy, but there is consideration.
And can you confirm that council has a development contributions policy mechanism in the works?
So
It's on our agenda next
from
meeting.
a technical point of view, there's a financial policy that's required to be part of the LTP.
Yes.
And that is the tool that gives officers the ability to be able to go through and make those decisions. So yes, there is.
Yeah.
And those developer agreements, are they based on negotiation, or is there dollars per lot, or is it based on you breaching A, B and C and therefore you need to?
So my understanding
How does that work?
is that they are a negotiated agreement. I'm not familiar to all of the content in each one that we have, but I know that's our process that we use currently.
Tammy, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, sorry, I've just been working with the other department within my group who are currently frantically working to get a paper through to the July council agenda, which is on development contributions. So I think the panel and yourself will be very interested when the paper is released, looking at what we can do to move forward to not just rely on development agreement framework. As James mentioned, there is a negotiation and development agreement, and the other party has to be willing to come to the table with it being a negotiation. And the only way we can trigger that is currently through the resource consent process. And because of the nature of that, it's all targeted to larger.
Are we saying that being property is past its ability to be charged DCs because
It would be dependent on timing and also what the developer does. The resource subdivision will need to go to the resource requirement. It's land use issues. You don't always do it if you're developing framework. Also, when you look at implementing a wider DC policy framework, you can look at stage as well. Though sometimes there's some development historically, not charge
That's yet to come in your development contributions framework, is it?
Next Thursday.
And next Thursday. So,
it was
a
removed in
development.
2014?
So just to move this along, I think what we're being told by council officers is that a development contributions policy is imminent.
It's been put forward to the
Yeah,
council.
and imminent.
They better, otherwise they won't get re-elected.
Did you need to say that? Okay, good. No, thank you very much, council officer, for helpful information there. And I hope that sort of answered a couple of your questions as well. Have you got anything further to add, or have you finished your? I'm not doing sorry.
No, I've said enough.
No, I don't want
Let's
to.
go to the club.
As I say, we've got plenty of time, so I don't want to cut you short if you've got anything else you'd like.
What would you like to do? You're getting them, they're getting them, this, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We've already got
There's
it.
just some very specifics in here, so
This is in your tape and the evidence that was
this will be
exchanged.
coming, a finalised version of this will be coming your way.
Oh,
they
okay.
have it.
Oh, that's already, yeah.
This is the 21-page brief of evidence, this sentence. We have that.
Yeah.
We'll send you an electronic version as well, it might be easy to do.
There's a lot of information, yes.
And I would just emphasise that at the end of section 5, we did actually come up with a possible interim solution for the fact that master plans and design guidelines are sorely needed but not currently available or offered. Our future submissions would seek a placeholder for future master plans and urban design guidelines. And we wondered if therefore we could seek a note in the urban zone chapters that could say something along the lines in the box on page 8, just above section 13. So I would appreciate your views on whether this could work. So it says something like, if a location is covered by a master plan and or design guidelines adopted by council, applications for land use and subdivision will be expected to align with those master plans, not required expected because it's a note. This includes community-led master plans and design guidelines that have been approved by the community board and adopted by council. And then the next bit, in the absence of such documents, the onus is on the developer or applicant to prepare a master plan and design guidelines with the community, affected parties, and tenant developer for larger developments intended to have, for example, more than 10 units. Something along those lines, we recognise that in the formal adoption of master plans and urban design guidelines would take a lot of time and is a formal process. But if there's any way to at least encourage, urge, whatever soft words are needed, developers actually to do something ASAP, that would be incredibly helpful, because we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing except a very weak operative district plan at the moment. And it looks as if it might be a long time before the PDP comes into effect anyway, but need to do with that.
I can say that the hearings will be completed in November. Isn't that far away? We will have our final report to council at the end of March, and then council will be meeting to make their decision on that in May.
Prior to 26th of May, 26th.
There you go, 26th of May is a hard deadline. So at 1 minute to midnight on the 25th of May, council will have released its decision on the plan. Now, as with every district plan, there is the right of appeal. You have those same rights.
Yeah.
But then having said that, sections of the resource management, if we still have one, will come into play about those bits of plan that are unchallenged and have community with it. We'll slowly over
And will be deleted again after the next election.
Well, who knows? We're in a very dynamic planning environment. We just need to play the ball that they're bowled at us. But that's certainly the timeline that we're looking to get these decisions.
Yes.
And that's and I can assure you that that's a deadline that will not move. And I see Ms. Wilson nodding her head very assertively.
Our community is very keen.
We understand how the need to have these matters finalised. So we're working at that.
Thanks for that clarification. But still, we probably needed something like a placeholder position for the master plan in the PDP. So eventually it will be part of the legal framework.
And as I say, council's working on other mechanisms at the same time. You've got the spatial plan bubbling away, and there'll be other things that will follow. But I mean, this plan, once it's operative, is not going to be the end of all of these matters. There are other processes running along beside it that eventually be implemented. You've got anything further to say on that, Mr. Willard?
Not at this stage, Mr. Chair.
But you agree with the sentiment. There are other processes underway that will ultimately be incorporated into the plan once it's out there as an operative document in part at least.
I think it's fair to say that and speaking with the urban design experts who were involved in supporting council in the adoption of Te certainly acknowledge the sentiment that these groups here today have made around the village feel. I think there's more work to be done to identify exactly what forms that we use. I think there's a challenge in applying statutory tests to developers where we don't know what the content of that might be yet. We don't know yet what we're committing to. And also noting that building owners, landlords, developers are also part of the community that we need to how we achieve the outcomes sought.
Thank you, that's helpful. So, now, I just wanted to put another question to you. Obviously, there are two new zones coming, and that's sort of falling right on your doorstep of evidence you presented today. Whilst we get to see the actual provisions of town centre zone and medium density residential zone, do you have any evidence to us on those two proposed new zoning frameworks?
We intend to submit it because we were informed, I think one of the Section 42 report said that the two new zones proposed by Kaina Ora would be addressed in the rezoning hearing. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the 42 report goes into some detail
Yeah.
on the merits of the new zones and why they've been proposed and what they are intended to achieve. There is a very extensive urban design statement attached to 42A report, prepared by a very experienced urban design professional at Bottom School. Have you read that?
I've read parts of it, I really have read parts of it.
Yeah. And so that sort of sets out the reasoning and the outcomes. That's sort of like the Section 32 analysis for the new zone. We haven't seen the provisions yet, but that's the rationale behind the new zoning framework. So we're sort of interested in any feedback you have about that approach. And it's obviously, and I think it would be fair to say that that's a design-led. It looks like that's a design-led planning framework.
Yes.
Particularly as we've got a really experienced urban design reporting on it.
Yes, we.
So is that the sort of approach you have been advocating? And
with qualifications, so yes, we looked at this, and is aware of this in this evidence, the Section 42 reports and so on. We ourselves, as our collective groups, also discuss some of these issues with a professional architect in urban, who specialises in urban planning issues related to urban design. And that's the evidence submitted by Katerina Murakova. And she read through those documents as well. And I think you will find that a lot of the comments she has made, we've picked up on it. We have picked up in our statement. We agree with almost all of the comments.
this one.
It was up online about the 7th of July. That actually outlines a number of concerns that we would agree with and some solutions as well. And a number of those points really will give you a strong indication of our accepted views on the future, on the town centre zones and the NDR zones.
Oh yes, I see she's made, that's right.
Proposed by Kaina Ora.
Yeah, she's made some
This
suggestions.
one we're referring to. And our statement, that's the longer document in front of you, the 30-page one, that picks up on and, let's say, focuses in on some of the points in Ms. Korakova's evidence, which again flags up the sort of issues we will be raising in more detail, targeted on town centre code and so on.
I'm not fair in that statement. There's support for the design approach to that new zone. And again, she's saying, well, when you get to writing rules, here's some ideas about what rules I think we should adopt. Right?
But her evidence for hearing 14 focuses on the zones of hearing 14. It doesn't say very much. It doesn't comment in detail, so that's the one.
Okay, so we're going to get a more fuller urban design.
Exactly, so you will get another statement, detailed statement from that architect. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if that's helpful.
But I suppose my question was that generally the approach taken by the council for these two new zones is generally supported by your groups.
I have to say with qualifications.
Yeah.
Yes,
everything's subject to seeing finding. But as I say, a lot of the Section 32 reasoning and analysis, well, that Section 32 reasoning and analysis is there. So that's what I'm sort of asking for feedback on.
I think because our groups
In the
have
context
not
of the
yet
design,
had
the
the
descriptive
focus.
framework.
We all work, so we have to focus on what's in front of us in this hearing. So this is
Focusing on these three, on the 4 zones in this hearing.
Yes, in section 42.
We have not had an opportunity
Yeah.
to discuss with our experts and between us our exact positions for on the town centre zone and the MDLZ. So I'd rather not say at this stage because
Well, I suppose
but
what
you
I'm
will
saying
certainly
is,
see indications of where we're going in Mr. Moore report.
I mean, this really is evidence. This is part of the 42A report, and it deals directly with the urban design merits of a medium density residential zone in the town centre zone.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It's part of the 42A report. But, okay, so I think what you're saying is that you're going to provide a response to that.
Yes.
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 Are you saying that we need or would benefit from having that information sooner rather than later? Because I think we've scheduled it sort of to have a discussion with our experts in August. A key person is away in Europe at the moment.
Well, we'll have to leave it to 15 then, because you're here now.
Yeah.
And I'm asking what have you thought of Ms. Redding's response, and you went, wow, we want to see the provisions first. So I think I'll leave that question there. I mean, I'm not being critical, I just wanted to know whether you wanted to respond to the Section 32 analysis now in the same way.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your questions on that.
Oh, sorry, we've got some more evidence.
sorry, I didn't realise there were 2 documents in that pile you gave me. So they now have both documents. That one. No, you've got that one. Yeah.
Katarina's report's really good.
That's the one that's online.
I know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I agree fully with it. But,
Yeah. So there's one online and then there's 2 in front of you now.
This is from the one online.
Correct.
So we've now got 3 documents. We've got
Yeah.
we've got the I think we'll call it the architectural assessment that was online.
Yep.
Yes.
So this 3-page document summary,
Yeah.
and then we've got this more detailed.
Correct.
Yes.
Uh,
But the text, 3 pages, not a summary, but it is about an additional topic that we developed on the after that long report was finalized.
It's on climate issues, the big issue is it's on a separate, shorter, it's a separate shorter document.
Yeah, I know. And then I looked down at the file that I
3
had
of the
left
groups
over. I thought,
present made PDP submissions on that topic. A 4th group didn't, so we have separated them to be
I'll
correct.
take my time to read that in some
Thank you.
detail. Probably start with
Clear as mud.
So, Rolf, are you going to give us some evidence as well? I just want to make sure that everybody gets to say what they want to say.
We're going to talk about this one, that one. Karen, you're going to say a bit more. What do you think?
I think we've touched it. Yeah, and then it helped us.
Just highlight. There's one, highlight the significance of this, because I think that's the new version.
Actually, that was supposed to be 5 groups, 24.
Oh, yes. Yes, we want to talk about.
24?
I wasn't prepared for anything other than the asking me to.
It's all in there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it?
We, I'd take this time to acknowledge the work that's gone into all of this that Melanie has led, and a lot of us, you know, as Benita points out, have other jobs and
Like you do.
are working on 4 or 5 other community projects and barely finding time to sleep in between. So we get these documents an hour before we come here and try to read through and present as best as we can. So if it seems a bit clumsy, my apologies, but it's really,
But it is a repeat of.
we're working on the fly.
It's a repeat of what we've said probably for the past 4 years.
in some form. Master plan, design protocols, master plan, design protocols. You know, it's a repeat, an ongoing repeat. So this is the opportunity, obviously, to.
A lot of the Sunday schools like to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the goals at the back, the colour, the pictures you were looking at were.
It's not just looking at pictures.
That's the goals about the village feel, about infrastructure, they were all created with the community. We would have spoken to, I think it was 14 or 1,500 community members, and those goals were created with them. And they're the things that are really important to them, and they're the things our Kerikeri particularly live and are guided by the goals that we set with the community. And that's why we're probably so resolute and we're like nagging parents at kids.
You're highlighting the council's buffer centres with urban design, are you?
That was going to be 8 stories, wasn't it? That policy.
It was going to be 8.
6 or 8 stories.
So it got reduced to 7, but it was actually only 3 inches because the floor levels were actually raised. We managed to winkle 3 inches off the 8-storey building before it went.
But again, that took thousands of hours of volunteers, you know, giving up time and work and business and families to fight things. And if we just had some guidelines and some master plans in place, it would just make life easier for everybody.
So I just mentioned connectivity is also a problem we found because of the ad hoc development. We've never been able to get cycleways, things for kids to go to school safely. We've wedded to cars, really, and to save for safety. We've never got it. We've just got endless one-way system off Kerikeri Road, and all the main roads, the 2 main roads, have got endless turnarounds.
So, thank you for you've obviously done a tremendous amount of engagement with our community. And that's really, important. But I'm just wondering, did you engage with the development community as well? I mean, the key to getting these things working is the people that do stuff buys into the same vision.
Organised a meeting and we had the developers there, the Bing property developer, like a number of the developers, and honestly everybody speaks the same language. They can't understand why there's no development contributions. They wanted them because then there'd be certainty around the costings rather than negotiations and stuff. And so there was a real
developed community has evolved over time here though. I mean, it used to be a lot of mom and pop developers around Kerikeri developing land, and now I think it's a much more, it's just much more professional, often led by probably out of town interests. So it has evolved, it's different, and we try to engage and get as much input and feedback in as we can about those relationships with like Jamie Peters and so forth.
But at the end of the day, they're going to do, as developers, what makes the best return for them, which is fair enough, that's business.
And what they want.
And a lot of them are outside the area, so they don't have that emotional attachment to Kerikeri, whereas the community, the true community, do. And so we need to have some guidelines around that.
And within the live steps of meeting with the developers, it came out order, because they really wanted them there and present. We've supported a lot of their activities. And of course, Tanya Fenua, Nati Arabia, and others involved, and have been involved with our Kerikeri on the board.
Yeah, that's
and
the
the development of all those community principles and goals that you have seen in the back of this paper, we'll see, that involved in as well. So we've got a very broad basis, and
Vision Kerikeri was founded about 20 years ago in protest against the 8-story building behind the Butler Center, which was already approved by council because miraculously the height limit had disappeared. So council couldn't say no. So there was an approval already, and our negotiations with the developer resulted in reducing it to 7 floors. However, 20 centimeters higher each floor, so not much difference in heights. We reflected the heights with balloons to show to the population how high that would be. And eventually, fortunately, in the property crisis in 2007, he couldn't proceed with the building, which he had not started, fortunately. And from that point on, we continue to do to be engaged in town planning, looking at projects, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, where can we do improvement, where can it be more sustainable, and so on.
So that's the car park that's behind.
Yes, yes. And also, the next step after that was to stop it happening again, was to reinstate a height limit. We never actually established how the height limit actually left our town plan, and for a while we were contemplating bringing the Twin Towers in New York here, but there wasn't enough car parking. We couldn't quite fit it in, yes. But there was no height limit. It just mysteriously disappeared, even though we were able to search the council files. We never found out how it happened.
Okay, well, have we got more evidence?
We'll send you on heights on page 16 of that 30-page paper. You find that it's a picture.
This paper?
Yes. Page 16.
It looks like that.
Oh, yes, the man standing between the two step buildings?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's standing in the middle of Kerikeri Road and is looking up the buildings on the right and on the left. And we think that you should not be able or having to look up for more than 2 stories. And then if there's a 3rd story, that should be recessed, so that from where he stands, he cannot see it anymore. He can still see the sky. That would enable us to keep the village character that is important to so many people.
So this would apply to the town centre zone? So
Yes.
indicating that this 60-degree height in relation to boundaries standard be imposed on the town centre zones?
Yes.
Because I'm assuming you'd have something like this for the medium density zone?
Yes.
It's just about whether it's applied to a town centre zone. That's the purpose of this?
That 60 degrees above 8 metres or whatever it is, as opposed to about 2
Yeah, so but
metres.
so what's the height before the recession plane
8
kicks in?
metres, I think they had in
Because
there.
I don't think you've drawn it on. Oh, 8 metres. I think that's on the edge of the page. Yeah.
8
So
or 9.
it's 8 metres and 60 degrees.
And
So
is
8
that-
metres will give you
2 stories.
well, commercial building is really in reality that's 2 floors.
8 to 9 metres, I would say. I mean, the 8 metres is in there as an
So I'd say 9 would get 3 stories, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Commercial stories.
Maybe that's why it's 8.
Depends how thick the
The
floors and
third
things are, I guess.
Third
Yeah.
floors to go back.
I think that was
Oh, no, I
what was
can
suggested by
never-
Katrina, the
But
architect.
yeah, you see that often in overseas towns that have a lot of walking and cycling and things like that. It's a
Yeah.
very intimate space, but it's actually 3-story. It's, medium densities, and it works really well. So it's just setting the rules in place.
And then because the setbacks are equally important, especially about new developments. It would be beneficial to have some photos in here as well when you have a wider pedestrian.
It's slightly different. Just to come back to the step backs, if you read the bottom page 16, you see the box at the top of page 17. That is our position. That's our position on the zones covered by the current hearing. Just to point out. But then to explain these photos here, there is an important point, page 17. As it's currently drafted, MUZ standard 6.1 will actually require sites with pedestrian frontage marked on the planning maps to actually construct all new buildings or alterations right up to the road boundary. And I understand that that's a standard planning sort of design feature now in some cities to avoid recesses. But if that happens, if it's adopted as it stands, it will actually eliminate some of the significant existing pedestrian areas in the CBD in Kerikeri. It may even do the same in some other towns, if there are mixed-use zones in other towns now or in the future, in other towns or in the district. So, if I can explain figure 1, this one here, on page 18, if MUZ Standard 6 is introduced as written, then, for example, the Butler Centre would have its front wall of the building, right on the road boundary. At present, it is set back, and I'm sure alterations won't be made, but this is just one example. We would lose a lot of existing pedestrian pavement if that standard proposed in S6 is actually adopted and amended. There are other examples, smaller ones. Figure 2, where again there are these sort of recesses where buildings themselves are set back from the actual road boundary at present, and that creates pedestrianised paved areas which are useful just for giving space for cafe tables, which really adds to the vibrancy and bringing people in. It helps the economy, the local economy of this town. It contributes to that sort of feeling of visual space. It gives a bit of visual breathing space almost in what would otherwise be like straight lines of buildings coming right up to the road boundary if this rule, this standard, is implemented without amendment. So we have actually proposed amending that in some manner so that the existing, let's call them setbacks, they're not exactly setbacks, the existing areas where buildings are set back from the road boundary can continue to exist.
Yeah, I'm sort of trying to understand this approach because obviously footpaths are part of the road.
Yeah.
And that's part of the public realm, so establish the footpaths.
Exactly.
As part of your road standard and the width of your road and the width of your footpaths and the width of any cycle lane gets implemented within the road reserve. Are you saying that commercial buildings should provide additional pedestrian width to become public realm or privately owned land that the public can use?
It's the first thing is to at least stop the gradual elimination of the existing, let's call them pedestrian areas that exist in these areas where, for historical unknown reasons, buildings are set back. And when I talk about road boundary, I mean the legal road boundary, which of course includes that paved area.
So you're wanting a commercial development to enhance the existing legal road boundary?
It would be good. At minimum, we don't want to see it eroded further.
Yes.
But if we can also actually have the buildings set, new buildings or whatever, new buildings set back to provide more pedestrian space, that would really enhance and help to revitalise the central area, because there are some areas where the pavements are really narrow, and given that the long-term sort of like business vision for revitalising the CBD is to make sure there's good, vibrant street, we do need pedestrian areas for that. I think, unfortunately, the idea of a CBD bypass or ring road is kind of on hold. So we've got to live with what we've got, possibly for a very long time. And anything that stops the further erosion of public usable space, let's say whether it's privately owned or publicly owned, usable space for the public, That's valuable space. We don't have a town square. We don't have it not in the CBD. We've got a domain that's like out to one side. It's not connected with the CBD. And this is something that the community has identified as something really, really missing. So this is, anyway, sorry, I haven't explained very well.
That's
The
my
description
fault.
here says it better than I
It's
have.
less about the
Sorry.
house and more about the what's, I guess, isn't it? You're saying that it's important to have these spaces and these alleyways and everything that we have adds to the character of our town. But, you know, is the approach to handle it with setbacks, or is the approach to say, hey, actually, these are public spaces and somehow the council or whoever owns those spaces should adopt that land that is currently part of the title of that property?
Sometimes what you've got to do is give over some sort of public benefit, because you're basically advocating, using private space for public use, and sometimes the district plans, they provide additional plot ratio or additional floor area ratio. So they can build, development can build more if they set back a couple of metres.
Well,
They enhance it for public,
a lot of places are cafes, so they've obviously got some sort of license to put their chairs and tables down in that space anyway, so, it's a bit of give and take.
People argue that provides character to the area.
Yeah.
Hard to deny that.
But for many years we have been requesting a CBD bypass so that the traffic doesn't go through to the Kerikeri Road anymore, which could then be pedestrianised. And that would be a benefit to shop owners and as well as people, so it's almost like a town centre.
Shop owners might have a view on that. If you look at Kerikeri or Waipu,
It's not really a bypass, it's a ring road. It's like, the grid network, so that the commercial area can expand, because at the moment it's very temporary on the homestead, because no one really knows what's going on. Everyone knows something at some point is going to happen, but it's very difficult for that to be developed and for commercial to extend, because it's just all up in the air. So that again is part of the master plan. What could it look like? No one really knows.
A number of buildings have already been purchased along potential routes, so I mean, it's not like this is a new idea.
Council's own process, right?
That bypass essentially goes between the two supermarkets. This first proposed by Becky Clark in 1978. It's been supported by about 3 or 4 other plans over the years, and it's actually embodied in the 10-year plan, I think in year 4. So, and purchase the properties required have been bought on the whole, except on the margin. So that's not new.
No, I seem to recall Becky Carter had the Kerikeri in the mid-80s.
Yes. And there's been other consultants that have reported as well. Yes,
No. And you see some sadness among our groups, because a structure plan was produced, was it around, finalised around 2008, adopted by council, but never actually put into effect. So there's a long history of community groups, businesses, everyone saying, please, we really need these things, we want them. But still we've had just ad hoc development now for a decade and more. And that's why you hear a certain amount of push from our side, asking for these guidelines and better guidance and more appropriate.
Good foresight in the 80s to have that plan when the population was a quarter or less of the size it is now, I guess.
That one-way system's pretty
But our point here is, 25 years go pretty fast, and the 25 years before that went pretty fast, and we're putting a plan in place for the next 25 years, so we're really passionate about making sure this one works for us.
One of the evidence that's often been put to me and other jurisdictions is consistent rhythm of buildings and their placement in the street. I mean, in Kerikeri and the main street in particular, you've got a whole lot of buildings that are going to be there for quite a long period of time. And assuming that people aren't going to go bowling buildings and start building again, a lot of that Are you worried that if you start bringing in these provisions of the second buildings back and you've got some buildings that are up to the boundary and some of them are setback, that you might lose that streetscape rhythm, or?
Yes.
Is that a concern? I've heard the argument that you know, a consistent rhythm of building places and frontage is a good outcome in the itself.
We had a discussion about what village character, village feeling means in relation to here at 14, particularly the scale, the dimensions of buildings, things like recesses. We did recognise, I think quite strongly, that the recesses, that's a better word to describe it, the recesses that currently exist for cafes, for just breathing spaces, for landscaping, to sort of break up, they really add something to
They're good placemaking opportunities, probably, for linger nodes and things like that.
So you're wanting to avoid them possibly being filled in?
Cool, yes.
I understand that in Auckland or big cities, there's been a drive to have sort of like solid, straight down walls of all buildings because it reduces crime apparently. People can't sleep in recesses so much, although there's often a recess for the doorway for a shop or a hotel or whatever. I understand that that's part of the thinking for why you would have everything coming onto the legal road boundary to get a straight line. However, given that, we are aiming for a township that we actually like and want to hang out and want people to visit.
Someone described it as human scale, you know, because you can go beyond human scale. I don't know really how to describe that any more than you get a feel for exactly what that is. But some of those commons that we don't have big wide roads and avenues, so when you get too tall, you get big long wind tunnels and shaded areas. You have little openings and alleyways. You have character and places to meet and mingle, and that's what a community is. Places for people.
Do you have anything to say about the actual components of the frontage, glazing?
See, I'd say that would be in the design protocol as well as the master plan about what visually the community, you know, would like to see in town. Because I mean, we do have a lot of pretty plain vanilla buildings. They don't have a lot of heritage or character or really anything like that.
I've sort of seen a situation where they've mandated quite large areas of glazing and then retailers put cover them with 30% off.
Yes.
Signage of them, cover the glazing.
The Katerina Dvorak or her let's talk about some of those things. And we do plan to work more with her in the coming months, certainly before hearing, to prepare more written information for the further hearings on the two zones.
Okay, well, so
we
say more to come.
More to come. And by size. Yes.
Just canvass you again.
No, you covered it.
I've asked most of the, I feel like I've hogged the questions, and I want to make sure the other commissioners get a chance.
Don't look at me. All right.
Okay, Councillor Lobsters, we've got the opportunity, got any questions of clarification? What's sorry, hold on. Sorry, you're just sitting patiently waiting for your turn, weren't you?
Okay. They haven't sent me a message. That'll be fine.
I didn't even know that. Okay, so I'm sorry, so the floor is all yours.
Thank you. You may have noticed or not that Kerikeri Township is built on the ridge. On one side we have the Kerikeri and the Pukepotora River. On the other side we have the Vairoa Street. So if you build high-rise buildings on this ridge, they're even higher than anywhere else. So we would be more comfortable with taller buildings down the ridge than on top of the ridge.
And this is explained a bit more in this Floricova's evidence as well.
Yes.
We see, she identified that as a solution to this quandary, that normally you would have tallest buildings in the centre and then have them reducing as you move out. But we're suggesting the reverse. Because actually that will preserve the amenity, the character that we're aiming for, that the community that has a desire for, much better and be more workable than the conventional way. We're trying to think outside the square.
Right. And then finally, I would just have a short summary. What we want is a shift from permissive to prescriptive planning. We want legally binding master plans and comprehensive urban design guidelines. We want enhanced public notifications. We want quality outdoor space and permeability. We want public open spaces, active frontages, sensitive building articulation, and high-quality materials to contribute positively to the streetscape. We need integrated transport networks, including safe and separated active transport options. We want to keep, we want to reduce the building bulk or keep the building bulk limited to retain the village character. We need to consider the strategic use of the topography, possibly enhance the town towards the rivers, which give more amenities, more opportunities. We want new public open spaces with appropriate landscaping, and we also think that the PDP is proposing to cancel the contribution of overall amenity and safety policies in the light industrial zone amenity. Now in Kerikeri, the light industrial zone is the middle lane, which for which it is planned to extend to another residential road, which is Hall Road. So it is already difficult to walk in that area. A lot of school kids are going through the area, so we need to have similar amenity values and walking possibilities in the light industrial zone as in the business zone as well. So that brings me to the end of.
So that was really quite a concise summary. Which document is that?
Yeah,
is that list in one of these documents?
At the very end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh. No, what I want to do is I've been trying to follow where it is in these statements.
Yeah, you've got the document.
And failing that little area, and I'm trying to type nowhere near this. So okay, so that's your
summary.
That's your summary at the page 21, or just before the middle, 20.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's your references. 19, sort of page
9,
it's 19. The summary from page 18 and 19. Is that correct? Yes.
It's the printed document, not that document.
This one. This one. This is a slightly different one.
Correct.
Okay, so there's the summary. The summary, page 20 of this print. I'm going to write that in my notes so I know if I can refer back to it. Summary, page 20. Now you will provide us with an electronic version of this, won't you?
Yes,
Thank you.
As well as of the other document, which we would like to spend a few minutes more on that.
Yes.
Yeah, we added a little bit about the climate-related matters, as usual, on the climate lens thing. To make it very brief, we think it is important to have the water-sensitive design protocol included, and that includes also the permeability and impermeability issues. We have extremely increased evidences of flooding now. We have weather boats coming all the time, and permeable surfaces are definitely needed in water-sensitive design, starting from surfaces that can be permeable asphalt down to lawn pavers. That would be the optimum. And to water retention and control of stormwater. We have detailed that here, but I think we don't need to say very much about it. We have already said a lot about it in our submissions as 521, as 529, and as 443. Are there any questions on that subject? We strongly support the PDB policies MUZ P5 and GRZ P7, but we think it needs to be added, especially in view of the fact that things are getting worse and worse. Insurances are getting more and more sensitive about this. As the last estimate on the flooding in 23 is estimated to be $3.5 billion, and the new ones are increasing, and cost of the Nelson is already estimated several times that now. So we think the water sensitive design is really, really important. I can enlarge on that if you like, but basically summarizing it, mitigating urban flooding through impermeable surfaces and limiting the amount of impermeable surfaces, especially in the light industrial zones and medium density areas. Improving the water quality, that means that runoff full of pollutions inside from the town and the entire runoff will not enter the water streams. Of course, we will be enhancing the well-being and ecological protection of the areas. And we will be building climate resilience because road repairs will be dramatic with more potholes and whatever coming up with weather bombs.
Yeah, thank you for that, and obviously that's something that we all have to be turning our minds to. You've talked about more permeable areas and less impermeable. What about other things like detention, retention, and reuse?
Yeah, so it should be a circular system.
Yeah, right? So my understanding, detention is a tank that holds the water until the major flooding event and slow release. Retention is keeping it and using it for something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And then roofs is stormwater flooding. Those you also embrace those.
So detention tanks, we're saying, has a bit of a problem because if you have recurring rainfall like we have now, the detention tanks are full, right? And then it just overflows. Whereas you concentrate more on tanks for houses, then people in the house will be using the water also during rainfall times, and you won't have that overflowing problem to that extent, right? So, yeah, it's all in there.
Yeah. I think, I thought you mentioned that, but I thought it could be significantly more.
Our biggest worry is about impermeable surfaces increasing more and more, and then more roof space, of course, and not making use of that. And at the same time, we have the signs coming up, water shortage, don't water your garden, etc., because we didn't store the water that came down during big rainfall periods. So detention tanks as such are much too small. We need extra storm water we need to put into really big reservoirs or lakes, for which we have made submissions as well.
And then there can be some other smart ideas. Paint the roofs white instead of dark in order to avoid heating up. Keeping the towns less hot when the sun is shining, and that can be quite intensive up here, as you know.
It will be a pretty interesting area design outcome if everyone painted their roof white.
I'm thinking now about the commercial roofs and which are usually flat. Yes. But in some areas you'll see white roofs as well, and probably silver is better than black. And unfortunately, black is very popular in New Zealand.
Luckily in the sea, you know what it is, other big companies now they extract cool paints, which absorb less heat into the roof
Although there are even paints that create energy. You know, just paint the roof and attach something, and you can actually gather electricity from that.
Yeah, solar panels painted on.
I think there's some national guidance coming out on that very shortly too. Okay. Sorry, have you finished?
Yes, thank you very much.
I've cut you off. I've tried to cut you off twice, so I wanted to make sure you finished. Has anybody else got anything else to add? Councillor, do you have any questions or clarification from anything you've heard today that you'd like to put through me back to these hard-working submitters? Well, thanks again. We really appreciate tremendous amount of effort you put into making these submissions.
For that, your phone needs a mobile or Wi-Fi connection.
Well, obviously my phone agrees. I have no idea why that just did that. It's on silent. Anyway, that's AI for you. No, thank you very much. I mean, every hearing you showed up to a tremendous amount of effort into your submission. And rest assured, that we're going to give really full consideration and have been really full consideration to your submission. And we know that you're all here unpaid. You all have jobs. Some of you have jobs that need to be filled. So thank you very much for your dedication and commitment, particularly to Kerikeri, but the whole district. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll see you again in one or all of the 15 hearings.
That's 3, I think.
So we'll definitely see you at 15 and I'm sure we'll see you probably in trouble in so.
Yeah.
So thanks very much again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Much appreciated.
I can, yes, but
Oh, yeah, no, but I just mean,
Probably going to wind up a little bit early today. I'm just wondering whether we've got any other matters that we need to address while we're still in sessions. I'm just wondering whether we might be able to use a few minutes just to have a couple of questions back to council officers that we could deliver today rather than tomorrow. But I'm just thinking about a few things.
I thought you might get thrown it now, you need to walk over.
oh, thank you.
Do you want to ask me? I think Commissioner Stratford wants to ask Are you living? Oh, what's the public? You're still in public session. Oh, did you want to ask non-public questions? No, we can't do that. Everything has to be done in public.
You want to go into confidential?
It's not a
Shall I?
No corporations are private, but they're not compulsory.
okay. How do officers propose amenity is addressed in Liz? What's that? Light industrial zone. And how was it in the operational plan? It wasn't. No, it was. It's been removed. Yeah. So can you speak to that?
Probably speak to you quite briefly, but I feel like I need to give a more detailed answer on this.
Okay, I'll ask it again because I missed it.
I'm sorry.
How do officers propose amenity is going to be addressed in the light industrial zone, and how is it being addressed in the operational plan already?
So I think the first question you'll ask is from clarification for yourself and what you mean by amenity. And it's a very broad statement in a sense by definition. So it might help to understand what sort of things you are looking at.
Not just landscaping, it's in here somewhere. While I'm looking for that, my next question is on the impermeable surfaces. There was a mix of submissions who were, wanting it reduced, some wanting it increased. The increase has pretty much been rejected, but S42A doesn't really answer my question on why.
Yeah, I think we had this conversation earlier today, I think, in the session. so this, particularly just generally speaking, I think the controls around impermeable surfaces, particularly for, I think it was the heavy industrial smoothing, you know, given that those areas are generally not serviced, it promotes the idea that developers turn their minds to how they manage that as part of the development process, given those sizes. Similarly,
urban zones.
urban zones,
Yeah.
there's simply probably not enough information to understand what the level of effect is and what impacts what direction we send or detail about how we manage it in terms of do we use a lot, do we use a little, how much. It's at this point probably a fairly bucket guesswork. There's no clear direction that we have from the regional policy statement, the regional planning from my memory. We'll come back to you on that. That says this is what you need to aim for. We can encourage it. It's not something that we have precluded, but requiring a standard where we don't know what's fair and reasonable is very difficult in an objective sense for each development. We could be putting a huge amount of extra costs on some developers that aren't justified without knowing what we need to manage, particularly on a catchment-wide level. We don't have a lot of information at catchment-wide level.
Interesting. There is I wonder if it's possible to get some RFSs on stormwater issues in the areas that would be impacted by an urban zoning, and and what the stormwater strategy is trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's my experience in the area relates to broader familiar with the experience that, for example, Hamilton went through. So initially they did some modelling of stormwater modelling around catchment planning, and there was something like 30,000 properties that were impacted, and that was quite a shock.
Yeah.
So their approach was to go back, remodel, break those down, understand the impacts and interventions that were required to efficiently and effectively deal with what the level of impact was going to be, and some of the things that are required, very similar to what these parties were talking about.
Yes.
Temporary storage, slow,
Increased impermeable surfaces.
not so much impermeable surfaces, actually, it was largely around storage, depending on the catchment and the issue.
Yeah.
Retention, and Hamilton City Council have a very good range of guidance documents around what tools that you might wish to choose. But that is informed by very specific information about how a catchment works. There are some high-level things that we've got to include in the assessment criteria for non-compliance with impermeable surfaces around considering downstream effects. So I'll consider those, but how quantify the impact is probably difficult to say.
It might be worth us getting a picture of the cost on, the ratepayers of stormwater that is not dealt with through district planning rules.
Again, we probably don't have the objective information to be able to give there. And there is some public
I can give it to you off the top of my head, how much money we've had to spend on fixing up, because of the volume of water coming off properties that have no stormwater management. It just goes on to somebody else's or comes onto council's land.
Again, that's a complicated legal situation where you are obliged to receive stormwater to a certain degree that comes off that was naturally going to come that way anyway. So look, we might have money on how much we spend, how much of that is for public benefit, how much is that for private,
Or caused by private.
Well, it's not caused by private, it's the benefit. Your spend is for public benefit as opposed to private benefit, for example. So what we're talking about here is across the board, any stormwater overview. It's not strictly speaking about impact on council services.
Okay, and I've got amenity to come
Can I
up
say
with it.
a question off that question. So that 15% impermeable surface in unparticulated areas, that's a trigger more so than the limit. It's like, well, if you're going to go over 15% of the site, we're wanting to see how you, the impermeable surfaces you rely on, whether you're going to detain, retain, reuse, blah, blah, blah. And it's not saying necessarily you can't do more than 15% coverage.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to have to come up with an integrated on-site solution if you want to go more than 15%.
Notwithstanding, again, I'm not an engineer, notwithstanding, there are some general engineering approaches around managing runoff at the same rate from the previous surface. So essentially you equalise discharge.
Stormwater neutrality.
Stormwater neutrality. You can also argue with, or FSC engineers argue till the cows come home, what that actually means as well. It will be a discussion that will be had at the time. We're dealing with rather large sites. Those tend to be either rural sites or heavy industrial sites which are designed for very large development. So there's generally plenty of room to manage. They might not necessarily be those ones, the sites that actually create a lot of urban issues. And also, putting it very simply, is that a lot of infrastructure that is in the ground was built and designed, this is public infrastructure, it was built and designed many, many years ago under different engineering specifications, under different environmental situations, right? So what we have now is not necessarily what the design capacity is. It's a complicated issue, it's a serious issue, it's a concern. I understand that there's some level of monitoring, monitoring, modelling available or being worked on at this stage, but I guess from our point of view it's difficult to put without comprehensive information, we're perhaps stumbling in the dark to come across something that's fair and reasonable to deal with the scale of the issue that we have. Acknowledge it's a serious problem.
At what point does the regional council need to become involved in those discussions? Because at the end of the day, they're going to need a seat of 15 consent, aren't they?
At some point, I'm not sure where we are in terms of our global, if we're renewing our global consents or when. Again, my experience in Waikato is that there are increases when councils undertake global consents, that there are increasing levels of treatment required, detention required, land use management required up and downstream where there's problem flooding issues. I'm not aware of that detail. I mean, to go through the RPS and the regional plan to find tooth comb on it. But my understanding is that not as advanced perhaps as some other regions that we have. But yeah,
work in progress.
Work in progress. I think there's like a serious discussion around the amount of infrastructure that we're going to need moving forward, regardless of any growth, and stormwater should probably factor into that. The numbers are quite low.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find the description of amenity because they weren't satisfied with the way that staff said it would be addressed through landscaping and planting, something like that. Pedestrian amenity, connectivity and green infrastructure in the light industrial zone. I don't know how that would work, but yeah, that's something that I am still pondering.
I think we've got, we have some disconnect potentially as well, so I'm sure we've spoken about this area around some of the light industrial zone and the land uses that are currently on it,
yeah,
and perhaps what's intended for. We've signalled as part of this, for example, that part of Waipapa would probably more likely be better suited to large format retail zone in the future. And Ms. Trinder has identified that and provided some additional development controls around that. And without wanting to be too centric, we do have some growth. Obviously we have Patapuria and some development looking towards the future.
Yeah.
And we need to do a significant amount of infrastructure studies and development to understand how we prepare for that 30 years worth of development in front of us as well.
I was saying with regards to the light industrial zone, we were talking about connectivity and footpaths, but again, that comes down to the road reserve. That's
Well, industrial zones, we're not traditionally, it's not something that you would be pedestrian focused.
I think what he was saying is that there are light industrial zones adjoining pedestrian focused areas.
Yes,
People
yes.
need to traverse them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would think any access enhancements still needs to be done within the road reserve
Yes.
and not on private land.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
you can put in a designation to widen the road.
Well, that was probably going to be my next point, Mr. Chair, is any public acquisition of land for public good would probably obligate council to designate and fund and pay for that land.
Yeah, so we're on the same page in that regard. But I was struggling to see how private land would provide a public access function without acquiring it.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the building on the corner at Waipapa? Bunnings. That I think their consent process meant that we got footpath, and connectivity to a walking track. And now we've lumped a sports field further down, so that's all going to be light industrial.
Yeah, I think there's a requirement in when we have consenting. There, since that consent was probably granted, I would say there's two things. One, we can accept conditions that are offered up by applicants, but the requirement for conditions is really significantly tightened up, so it must be in effect directly related to the activity, much more tightly so than perhaps at the time. So I would say that it's probably more difficult. I would say that we could, particularly without a specific strategic plan that's looking to identify those routes as well. But I think perhaps it's a long bow for the light industrial activity to create pedestrian access to. That's on council.
Oh, and NZTA, where it's state highway.
Yeah.
But we've got connectivity already into Waipapa is what I'm meaning, and I think that's what they mean by maintaining amenity in light industrial zones, so that you've got that pedestrian connectivity. Like we put a bridge in, so people can get from the Kerikeri side to across that river into the rest of the what's it called, big box shopping area.
Yeah. So as part of the particularly obviously there's the additional development that we're identifying here. So some of the work that we've identified also includes more structure planning, master planning, whatever you like to call it, that will look at dealing with connectivity and things like that.
And amenity.
And
amenity.
And amenity, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
So is there anything you want to add, Sarah?
Tomorrow.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a really quite productive day, actually. And we've enjoyed the opportunity to have a bit of a discussion with you on some of these evidence matters, and we'll probably take up that opportunity tomorrow as well. So I think we can adjourn now.
Okay.
Everybody ready to adjourn?
Yep. I'll do our closing karakia for
So
us.
who's going to do our closing?
I'll do our closing karakia. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou arakia o ihi korati me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake ake, amene.
Amen. Thank you. I will stop the recording.
And we're back tomorrow for 9 a.m.
9 a.m. sharp.
Correct.
Foodstuffs and McDonald's. That's bad.